Cool. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Construct Strategically. Jans with Andy. Today I've got Blair Chant with me. Blair's got a wealth of experience working in the construction industry over the last 10, 15 odd years.
Yeah, about 15 years, yeah.
Yeah. It's, and working for main contractors, subcontractors and for clients, now most recently. Yep. So go on, mate. Firstly, though, thank you for being here, and
No
I
problem.
really appreciate your support. Yep. Go on, tell us a bit more about yourself.
A bit about myself. So I started initially in the construction industry as a geotechnical technician at Becker.
Right.
So I and then moved on to a civil main contractor, then on to Henderson Demolition, and I'm now for the last 12 months or so been a project manager for Kāinga Ora, but I'm not a spokesperson for KO.
Yep.
So
Let's
all of
note
my
that
opinions.
Blair is not a spokesperson for KO. Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess I'm one of the few people that has experience at every area of the construction sector: government, consultant, main contractor, subcontractor.
That's quite interesting, right? So you actually started with Becker, that's a design company, design consultants. Mm-hmm. Then you moved on to Henderson Demolition.
No, but it was JFC.
Oh, you went to John Fillmore, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So they do civil work.
Civil work, yep.
And then you moved on to Henderson Demolition, a demolition
That's right.
company that demolishes big buildings and whatnot.
Yep.
And then you moved on to KO. So talk us through that transition. How did that happen?
Luck more than anything else.
Yeah.
At every avenue, it kind of it's not really a transition that I think is repeatable. It's I fell into working for Becker because that was through a friend who said, apply for this role, I'll put in a good word for you.
Right.
It's an entry-level
Just
job,
like, just like most jobs in New Zealand, I'd say.
Being a lab technician, entry-level job, so didn't require much more than that.
Yeah.
Just interviewing well and away you go. There's not a lot of room for growth as a lab technician.
True.
So, I went looking for an entry-level job somewhere where there would be growth, and that's how I ended up at Fillmore's. I just applied normally, and it was just through mutual connections between JFC and Henderson Demolition. They used the same at the time. They used the same safety consultant.
Right.
So the safety consultant said, "Give this guy a call."
Right.
And that was it. I spent 9 years at Henderson. Learned a lot.
Yeah, I bet you did. Let's talk about that a little bit, right? That'll be an interesting chat, right?
Yeah.
So you were the main. What was your primary position? You were the contracts manager for Henderson Demolition.
Yeah. So they had a bit of trouble really giving me a job title, I guess, because
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. Well, yeah. What's the step above Jack of all trades?
I don't know. You tell me. you lived that life for 9 years.
Yeah, so for most of that time, I was just referred to as contracts manager. But when we had business cards made, my job title was never on the business cards because
you were just Blair.
You needed me. Yeah, I was Blair.
You were Blair.
Who knew Henderson knew Blair. They knew my boss Ricky, and you were dealing with one or other of us, and we would solve your problems for you.
Or break down stuff that you want broken down.
Well, that's the problem. That's you want fixing, right? Is something's in the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, for most of my time there, my title was contracts manager.
Yeah.
And then as the business was sold and kind of expanded into a group, they needed a new role, and after a bit of deliberation, I got lumped with head of contracts, which was just a way of sort of saying, hey, we know you're not like the rest of our contracts managers, so here you go, here's a different title.
Yeah, right. It says titles. I mean, in my opinion, I've always said it. Titles don't matter.
No,
Don't mean much. I mean, it's the amount of influence you have in a job, a positive influence you have in a job means more than the title itself.
That influences both within your organisation, but also your networks and your relationships outside of the.
Very important.
Right.
See, I've never gone chasing for a job title. Like it's really never mattered to me. I said I can influence positive change. Doesn't matter what you call me. You can call me planner, scheduler, project controls manager. I don't know. There's 15 different titles, man. You can call me whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. You know.
Yeah. It's the skill set that people are after.
100%.
It's the
amount of positive change.
Yeah.
Positive change, effective communication, problem solving.
What can you bring, essentially?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the vast majority of my career, I mean, more than half of my time in the construction sector has been with Henderson Demolition. So,
let's talk about the key things you learned in your time with Henderson Demolition, because I'm sure we'll then jump into how that currently helps you with your role as a project manager at KO. Mm-hmm. But what's that knowledge base that you gained at Henderson Demolition, being the step above jack of all trades? What are the key skills you learned? Yeah, you learned some good design background from Becker. Yeah, you managed JFC. You understood how main contractors work. Cool. But you stayed there for 9 years.
Again, my opinion, right? Subcontractors, I think, are largely undervalued in the construction industry.
I'd agree with that.
They're where a lot of the innovation, the problem solving comes from.
Yep.
And it's not captured, and it's not necessarily spread wider throughout the industry. It tends to collect within just that organisation that came up with it.
Why do you think that is?
Because they're very protective of it. Because it becomes a selling point. It becomes, certainly we protected every little piece of innovation we had,
right?
And would steadfastly not share it.
But isn't that not good for the industry as a whole?
Yeah, but again, this is subcontractors' job isn't to be good for the industry. It's
make money.
To make money, right? And you make money by being better than your competition.
So that's any company's job, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take these IT companies for example, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Set up Silicon Valley. Yep.
Yep.
It is every single IT company right next to each other. They're constantly poaching stuff.
Yep.
Why do you think they're all located right next to each other in Silicon Valley?
Because information leaks, right?
One way or another it does, right?
Yeah.
But why don't you collaboratively grow as opposed to protect your information, let it eventually leak?
Because businesses are there to make money. And so anything that's going to reduce your advantage over your competitors, you're not going to be in favour of. And industry, the businesses won't necessarily lay all their cards on the table. They just won't, because they don't want to lose their advantage over their competitors. So the onus is on the operators within the industry who aren't there to make money to really drive that change in behaviour. That's where I think government groups, non-profits, social enterprises, and also professional associations can do a lot to sort of coax that information out of their members, out of the general, because there's a lot of knowledge that's trapped at that subcontractor level, and it
doesn't find its way to the tier ones. It doesn't find its way to the government organizations as such, and
yep.
and that layer of information is lost there, or it's just stuck there.
It's stuck there.
Stuck there.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And subcontractors, on the job we were on, I don't know how much we can go into that.
Yeah, we can go to that. We worked in Auckland Airport for the Auckland International Airport, where we built an airport within an airport.
Yeah.
Which is a really interesting job. That's where I first ran into you.
Yep.
That was what, 6 years ago, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Go on. You're going to say something about Auckland Airport.
Well, so the subcontractors on that project,
Yeah.
and on every project where they have a stabilized base where there's a compound where they can congregate, which there was on that project, they talk to each other a lot more freely than they will with the main contractor.
Interesting.
This is just normal for subcontractors, right?
Yeah, right.
This is how they operate. And even more so, there's that camaraderie between subcontractors that isn't necessarily there with the main contractor.
Yeah.
Because
you have to work together on site.
You have to coordinate with each other. The main contractor isn't necessarily seen as the enemy, but they are seen as that they're your client. So that same relationship. Sorry?
They pay the bills.
They pay the bills. But you need to understand that because they're paying the bills, you need to keep that positive relationship with them as well. So,
not
pure,
necessarily
brutal
open.
Honesty and openness isn't necessarily the way to achieve that continual work pipeline, right?
Okay, that's very interesting. What would you do to change that? And would you change it? Would you do you think that's better for the industry if you would go, right, if the relationship between a tier 2 contractor and tier 1 contractor was a bit more open, would that be better for the project? Would that be better for the industry?
So I guess we've got to be careful with changing anything, right? Because there's always knock-on effects.
Oh.
And it's not that the model doesn't work. It's that there are certain cons that come with it, that there are pros that come with it. But yeah, that information being trapped is obviously a massive con. To fix it, I mean, in many ways, that's already happening between main contractor and subcontractors. When the more projects that a subcontractor will work with a main contractor, once there's that sort of that preferred contractor relationship, some contractors tend to be a bit more free with their innovation because they know they're already, excuse me, they're already likely to have that pipeline in place. So there is no needing.
But that's such a New Zealand way of doing things, though, isn't it?
Sorry?
That's such a New Zealand way of doing
It
things.
is. It's all about relationships in New Zealand. It's a really small pond, and you want your species of fish to be the dominant species of fish.
I don't necessarily think that's the best way forward, though. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know if it's the best way forward.
Yes, I mean, equal opportunity. I know this is right. Yes, you're forming that relationship. Great for the subcontracting company. That's awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like you said, there's a layer of information that's trapped there. That's not getting brought out to the wider industry for greater good so the whole industry can move forward. And what is that information? Again, if you get into those details, we can sit here for days, I suppose. But collectively, here's my question, right? Here's my question. Do you think the industry has problems currently?
Lots of them. Yeah,
right?
Lots of them.
So what's your top 3? Or what were your top 3 that you faced at Henderson Demolition? As a subcontractor, what were the 3 critical problems that you dealt with on a regular basis?
So the main one is the skill shortage.
Skill shortage?
Right. Skill shortage, I think everyone understands as being a major obstacle, and has been for decades.
Yep. No argument there.
It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because the subcontractors keeping that innovation with themselves also means that when your client doesn't understand how your innovation works or how your model or process, how you do things better.
What value that brings
What
for the greater good.
It's a harder sell to make, especially if you haven't got that existing relationship. It's the first time the two companies have worked together. You're essentially asking the main contractor to take a leap of faith.
You're taking everybody to take a leap of faith. But, but that's why you have a contract in place, NZ 391 in place to protect every party. But
Yeah.
All right.
So
there's skill shortage. There's the information getting trapped at the subcontractor level.
Yeah.
What are the other critical problems that you consistently run into as a subcontracting company working for main contractors?
There's my personal big bugbear would be this reliance on technology over good planning. So because we have cell phones, we have emails, we're so ready to make contact and rely on our relationships. It's meant that we spend less time on planning because we know that we can always.
Help me understand that a bit better, right? Because I'm pro construction digitalization.
Me too.
Yeah?
Me
right?
too.
So where do you think the hold up is there?
The hold up there is.
So you said technology is impeding planning.
No, the way we are using the technology.
Or utilization of technology.
So, for instance, as I said, that if you take the industry back 30, 40 years, right, we've got a landlines only. We have, it's very, very basic.
And when you told somebody you'll be there at 4 o'clock, you were there at 4 o'clock.
You were there at 4 o'clock.
You don't need to check 10 times.
There was no calling 15 minutes in advance.
And texting, are you there yet?
Right? But whereas now you do have that connectivity, and there's a lot of bonuses to that. But people have spent less time planning, right, and making the plan robust to the point where they have that reliance on that connectivity, which just leads to more firefighting, to more, you're constantly trying to solve problems as a last minute, whereas, 40 years ago, this would have been planned 3 months in advance.
And you're proactively solving problems as opposed to reactively reacting to them. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting take on it. It's something I never thought about, but yeah.
So we have to be aware, I guess, whenever technology in and of itself is always going to bring benefits, right?
100%.
There's no question there. But the way in which we use the technology can bring perverse outcomes.
Absolutely. So if you look at all the construction companies out there, they get different pieces of software, right? And they believe these pieces of software are going to solve problems for them. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what they sold, which is great.
Yeah.
Yep. And something that I kind of constantly focus on is where's the interrelatability of data from that software to make data-driven decisions as a whole? So you have 10 pieces of software. My question is, how do they integrate? How does the databases of those 10 pieces of software integrate in the back end to then provide greater value to make better decisions?
Absolutely. And the way
because there's nothing worse than isolated data sitting somewhere in the corner.
100% agree.
Yeah.
And we're actually moving, in my opinion, we're moving closer and closer to having those silos of data as we, identify more problems and create new software to solve specifically that problem in isolation, rather than a wraparound solution that,
But the question is, how do you make that affordable for construction companies to purchase, to integrate the data and get them to understand the value that it brings?
Affordable at every level, at every layer, right? Because what a tier one contractor can afford is very, very different than a small owner operator subcontractor, block layer.
I know the pain, mate.
I
know the pain. The number of softwares I had to buy, I know the pain.
Yeah. So that's a tricky problem to solve, and I don't think there is a silver bullet, and nor will there ever be a silver bullet. But the industry as a whole needs to understand that solutions that work for tier one aren't going to work for the rest of the industry.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you bridge that gap?
By having a suite of solutions, right? By not having a one-size-fits-all approach,
Oh.
and by not just identifying the problem, but properly understanding the wider implications of that problem, and then devising the solution,
Yeah.
and testing the solution, and revising, and continual growth, continual improvement. It's not without that kind of approach. Whenever someone touts a new piece of software, a new piece of hardware, or something, I'm always a little critical on.
Oh yeah,
Is this
skeptical.
Is
You
this
just go,
actually going to
Yep.
do anything, or is this just going to be? I also think it's important that we don't focus too much on data collection. Hear me out here,
Okay.
because you'll agree with me by the end of it.
We'll find out. We'll find out.
That data, you can collect data on anything,
Yeah.
but if you're not using the data or have no intention on using the data, then the collection of it is pointless. You can collect data on how often your payroll stuffs up a individual's pay,
Yep.
the payroll team, and but as a smaller company, how often does that happen?
Okay.
And what value is that providing to
Agreed.
the business?
So it's hence why I go, you've got to focus on structured data collection.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because if data is not well structured, it's.
Yeah.
Do you understand the data triangle? So I don't know. I got this explained to me. It's how we've learned it through the road code, right?
Yep.
So technically, let's say you're parked up on a light.
Yep.
And you see red lights, and technically the base data information there is RGB, and RGB has a code, right?
Yep.
That's raw data.
Yep.
And then when your brain processes it to different colors, you go, all of that actually means red, orange, and green, right?
Yep.
But then where that's actually converted to knowledge and wisdom is where you know you've actually got to stop on a red, slow down on an orange, and go on a green, and that's knowledge and wisdom. So the whole point is, how do you take structured data? This is a very simple example, of course.
Yeah.
This is something that we've been trained to do our entire lives, unlike what you and I do for a living, where nothing is as straightforward as that.
Yeah.
But then therein lies the challenge. How do you take all of the data, or the structured data that is being collected, or, like you said earlier, don't collect data for the sake of collecting
The sake
data.
of collecting it.
Yeah.
That's where I guess you need to have those filtration processes in place to extract the data that's actually worth collecting, and then processing on top of that, analysis on top of that.
Yeah. So when I set up strategic planning, I said, okay, what am I bringing to the industry?
Yeah.
And I said, right, and like we went earlier, am I willing to share my IP with the industry? And I said, the answer to that was 100% yes. I'll put it on my website.
Yep.
So if anybody's interested, it's strategicplanning.nz. Check it out.
Good plug.
No, good play.
It's
I
your
like
podcast.
that. It's my podcast. You're on it, mate. No, it's out there. My IP is out there for any project control professional that wants to learn about project controls. Go dig into it. I'm willing to put it out there.
Yeah.
And the first thing I said was I'm going to focus on structured data collection. And you take any project. What's the three key bits of information that you really need, right? You need your time information, your cost information, and your design information.
Yep.
Then what's the fourth most important thing? Is the people that can influence any one of those aspects.
Yep.
And if you can integrate and collect good relevant data for all of those four aspects and integrate all of them, therein your project succeeds. You're managing time, you're managing your costs.
Yes.
Yeah, you're managing your design, more importantly.
Yeah.
New Zealand needs a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who are the only people who can influence this?
Yeah.
It's the people managing the job.
I think that, again, this comes down to that reliance on technology is actually working against that, because our methods of capturing that data
Yep.
is now stronger than ever. It's
Not really.
our ability to.
Ability to.
Yeah.
Are
Not
we
that
utilizing it all?
are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're not.
Not that we are, but our ability to is stronger than ever.
Yeah.
We could again collect that data to quite a high level, but I think that the planning aspects and the inherent understanding was second nature a few decades ago. Several decades ago. It was second nature.
Yeah.
If you talked to a project manager from a couple of generations ago, that's what they did. They understood everything to a really, really infinitesimal, detailed perspective and how it all related.
Yeah, and how they
and
all
it was
integrated.
reliant on individuals. Now, I'm not saying that's a good model. I'm saying it worked at the time, and because there was a lack of technology, it was the only way you could really do it. It was having either really robust systems, really talented individuals, or both.
Yep. So in summary, what you're saying is, even though technology has evolved, we are not utilizing it to its full potential to date in the construction industry.
Yeah.
And there are things we can do better?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Get your book out. We'll write a list of them.
We'll write a list. Maybe we should probably do that, man. Get that recorded and put that out there too. Have a brainstorming session.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's because I think, as I mentioned earlier, we've come to a reliance on technology to fill in our gaps, our flaws, rather than utilizing technology to advance the industry. We're using it to sort of fill in gaps that are largely caused by a skill shortage. I think that's how everything's sort of
intertwined. This is a complex issue. It's not one that you and I are going to solve today.
No.
But I'd love to bring out the key issues, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and that's the whole purpose of this podcast, to bring on people from the coalface to talk about the real problems going on in the construction industry, so it boils to the surface eventually. But I do want to step into something now, right?
Yep.
Something quite interesting, right? So you've worked in Henderson Demolition for a period of time as a subcontractor, which is great. Now you've moved on to KO, right? So how have you now taken your learnings from a contractor perspective? Now you work for the client. What are you doing differently to influence positive change in your current role? If you can talk about it, sure. I'd love to know.
Yeah, I can probably touch on it at a high level.
Go. I mean, I want to know what you're doing differently.
How I operate, and this is how I operate within KO, but it was how I would operate anywhere I was employed.
I'm more interested in you moving from a contractor perspective into a client perspective, where you have authority to influence greater change, and how are you utilizing that power?
Power is a very strong word.
It sure is. Or the authority. Let's rephrase that to authority.
Yeah. Well, so within any government organisation, there's levels of power, right? So, and there's levels of
authority. You mean?
Authority.
Yep.
Authority. So, as an individual, I don't think I'm using authority any differently than anyone else.
Yep.
Any of my colleagues, and again, I'm speaking very, very high level, or anyone else in government for that matter. But my approach to the work personally is very, very based on the skill set that was built while I was a contractor. So that's understanding relationships and the strength of relationships, building those. So I'm less reliant on the process, regardless of where I am, and more on building those relationships, because that's what a lot of the industry as it is understands. That's where we collectively are as the construction sector. The relationships are such a key component, and that that can be lost in larger organisations, regardless of what they are.
Yeah, because the number of points of communication are multiple when you've had, I don't know, 20 different people leading a project. There's that many connection points between the 20 people to transfer information. But you said you're putting more reliance on the people as opposed to processes.
Yes.
Why?
Why? Because from my personal experience, that has been the way to drive success, has been through maintaining those relationships, by building those relationships.
Agreed. People can influence positive change.
Yeah.
Not without structured process, though.
Not without a process.
Yeah.
No, certainly not without a process. But what am I trying to say? You can't set a process in place and then
Force people to
leave it alone.
Yeah, 100%.
And let it carry on.
No, I agree.
Like, you need to. There's several steps where you need to intervene.
Oh, yeah. You've got to get people to buy into the process.
That's it.
100% you've got to get them. If you don't bring them along on the journey, you've lost them even before you started. Okay, that's interesting. So you're putting reliance on the people, bringing them along on the journey to build that process and get them to buy into a process to deliver a good output.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the value, that's your main focus in your current position. That's what you're taking from your experience as a subcontractor into your client-side role.
Yeah, I think I'm always going to rely on relationships.
It's the most important thing. I agree.
Because
it's not very important.
I think it's also where my personal strength is I love having a good yarn.
There we go.
All right.
Hey, mate, you made it. You're in the right place, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, again, if you're isolating that knowledge and that innovation in one place, I think, strategically, organisations won't necessarily share it.
Yeah.
But you will share it with people you trust. You will, there's the, what am I trying to say? You're more free with your communication when it's personalised.
Yeah.
And communication is vital.
Yeah.
So
effective communication is vital.
Good communication is vital. So when you're able to put a personal flavour to that communication, it's always best to.
Yeah.
That can be lost if you're reliant on the process to achieve the outcomes you need without recognizing that, hey, there's other ingredients to the success here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
does that make sense?
100% it does. It does. But I think we're almost out of time. So in summary, we said there's tier 2 organizations, there's a lot of information getting trapped, but innovation getting trapped down there. There's no way for it to get out, or there's the lack of willingness to share that information.
Yeah.
And how do we bring that collective innovation out and help the industry as a whole? Yep.
Relationships.
Relationships. Yeah. The importance of relationships, and that's a key aspect of what we spoke about, and I 100% agree with you there, and how important relationships are. What else did we touch on? Did I miss anything in the summary? Yeah, and you're doing a great job at KO, using all your experience from Henderson Demolition and influencing positive change from a client perspective.
I'm doing what I can.
Mate, I'm sure you'll do great things. I mean, having worked with you in the past, I'm sure you'll do amazingly well. I'm really looking forward to the change you're going to bring about within KO and for the for Greater New Zealand and the housing shortage that we've got currently going on. But anyways, mate, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your support, being here, taking time out to have a yarn.
Keep going, Andy. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
We do need to talk more about the issues and problems that are facing the construction industry, because we're not talking enough about them.
I agree.
And if we don't talk about them, we don't solve them.
Absolutely agree, and that's the whole purpose of this podcast, right? Bring people on who are passionate
Yeah.
about the industry, just like you and me, and have a yarn. Yeah.
Cool.
But anyway, mate, thank you so much for your time.
No
Appreciate it. Hopefully, we'll have you on for another podcast soon.
We'll see.
All right. Cheers, guys.